Alright, we are going to be making a lightweight box for this book. This book has already been wrapped in acid-free paper because there's damage to the spine, and the acid-free paper will protect further damage as it goes in and out of the box. So the tools we'll be needing are a box cutter, a mat board to cut on, a ruler, acid-free tape, a scorer, a bone folder, scissors, a triangle. This is useful but not necessary. It's a cutout of the shape we'll be cutting later. And either an X-Acto knife or a box cutter. I prefer the box cutter. So the first thing we'll be doing is measuring the book. I like to use the triangle and the ruler. Leave the book wrapped in acid-free paper while you do this. So the width, you will also need a pencil. The width is 5 6/16. So I've written W, 5, and then a superscript 6. I'm also putting my initials down so that if there's something wrong with it, they'll be able to find me and ask me about it. Alright, I'm getting 7 12/16, a little bit more than that. So that 32nd I'm marking as a dot after the 12/16 in superscript. Alright. Next I'm measuring the spine. It is 13/16 and a dot. However, it's good to also measure the foredge, which is 12/16. Because the difference is less than 4/16, it's fine, we can make a normal box. In a future video, I'll show you what to do when the difference between the spine and the foredge is greater than 4/16. Right, the next step is to pick the cardstock. Because this is a fairly normal book, I'm going to use 10-point cardstock. If the book was floppy or misshapen or warped, I would use 20-point cardstock. The next step is to mark up the cardstock. The pattern that I mark it up will be in a diagram in the manual, but I'll talk you through it right now. So the first piece we're going to make we call the tongue piece, and we'll explain that later. The tongue piece, we start with the height. It's going to be this way. I'm writing down H just so I don't get the pieces confused. And the height is 7 inches 12/16 and a dot. I'm also going to write down 7 inches 12/16 and a dot along here. Next, for this piece, we put less than the width for the first panel. I like to round down 1 inch and some change, so the width is 5 6/16. I'm going to go down to 4 inches. The spine is 13 and a dot. So first panel, less than with a width. Second panel, the spine. Third panel, the width exactly, which is 5 6/16. Next panel is the spine again, which is 0 13/16 and a dot. The next panel, this is important, is the width plus 3/32, or 1.5 sixteenths, which equals 5 7/16 in a dot. This is because this panel needs to cover, it's wrapping around, so it needs to cover a longer distance. The next panel is going to be the spine plus 1 and a dot, or the spine plus 1.5 sixteenths. And that is going to be 15/16. Now the next two panels can either be each 1 inch or each 3/4 of an inch. In this example, the spine is a little less than an inch, so I'm going to pick 3/4 of an inch for the last two panels. This will be the tab that wraps in. But if the spine was ever 1 inch or greater, I would do 1 inch tabs at the end. I'm drawing a large X because I'm going to cut off the remainder. But before that, I'm going to move on to the mouthpiece. This piece has the width going this way, the width of the book, which is 5 inches and 6/16. I'm going to write down W equals 5 and 6/16. The first panel of the mouthpiece is less than the height. So again, I like to take away an inch and some change to get less than the height. So the height equals 7 12/16 in a dot. So this will equal 6 inches. Because the size of this piece of cardstock is 36 inches, you never want the first panel to be more than 9 or 10 inches, because then you'll run out of space. The second panel of the mouthpiece is the spine, which is 0 and 13/16 in a dot. The middle and third piece of the mouthpiece is the height plus 1/16. This is because the mouthpiece is going to be wrapping around the tongue piece at this point, so it needs to be a little more than the height. The height is 7 12/16 and a dot, so height plus a 16th will be 7 inches 13/16 and a dot. The fourth panel is the spine again. And the last panel is less than H, which we decided earlier was 6. Trying an X so that I'll remember to cut that off later. And now step 4, to cut the cardstock. So I'm going to trim off the extra length and trim down so that this mouthpiece is 5 inches and 6/16. And now I'm holding the tongue piece and cutting off the extra cardstock. Alright, step 5 is to score the cardstock. That means I will take the scorer and the triangle, and along the marks that we made earlier, just firmly mark once. Score once. And it's important to be consistent. So I put the triangle so that I can fully see the mark I made. But as long as you place the triangle consistently relative to the mark, everything will be fine. Alright, now on to step 6. In this step, for the tongue piece, on the side that ends in 2 small panels, or 3, the spine and then 2 1-inch panels or 2 3/4-inch panels, you're going to trim a triangle off the corners of that last panel so that it can easily tuck in. For the mouthpiece, you're going to take that cutout from before and the box cutters or X-Acto knife. It helps to trace that trapezoid you're going to cut out with a pencil first, and then take the box cutters on the mat. Okay, so this is the mouthpiece with this tab, and this is the tongue piece. Step 7 is to take the double-sided tape and on the edge of the middle panel, not touching either of the score marks you made. And I am touching one of the score marks, so I'm going to peel that off and cut it a little shorter. There. So take the tongue piece and line it up so that the 2-part tabs are on top of the trapezoid you cut out, because this is at the point at which it's going to tuck into the book once you fold it all together. And I'm laying that there so that I can see where not to put the second piece of tape. I don't want it to touch where this tab is going to put in, but I still want it fairly close so that it'll put enough tension to keep the tab inside the box. Now, this is the tongue piece. It goes with spine, with spine, with spine, tab, tab. At this point, with spine, with, right here, I'm going to fold it and crease it, because this is the point that goes along here, along this edge on the mouth. I'm creasing just part of the tape where I'm going to peel off from. This keeps the sticky part on the cardstock and lets me peel away the backing. I find the scissors are useful for peeling apart the tape. So now we've got the exposed double-sided tape on the mouth. I've pressed it against the edge. I'm going to carefully line this up so that it creates this shape with the tab on the mouthpiece over here. The next step, step 8, is to crease all the cardstock. And this is creasing along those score marks you made before. And when you're using 10-point cardstock, you will get some wrinkles or smaller creases, but that should be fine in moderation. Right. Now it's time to see if the book fits. When we close it, and I'll do this facing you, we go top, bottom, your right, and then the left. Okay, this is popping just a tiny bit, so I'm going to conform it. I'm going to start on this edge. And this, by pressing here, I'm creating a little more length. I'll do the same thing over here, giving this, each time I do it, I'm giving a little more leeway to the next side. And then this edge. And now it's closing nicely. Be sure to put the glue slip back with the box. And that is how you make a lightweight cardstock box.